Have you ever wondered why we're so obsessed with prophecies? Predictions about the future. It seems like it's baked into our DNA. From ancient myths to Hollywood blockbusters, the idea of knowing what's coming next is just completely captivating. But this isn't just about entertainment. For millions of people, it's a huge part of their faith.
Okay, let's dive into this. This isn't some new phenomenon. It's actually deeply rooted in history, especially in the big Abrahamic religions. The source we're digging into today really highlights how central these predictions are, not just in Christianity and Judaism, but especially in Islam, where they paint this incredibly detailed picture of what's often called the end times.
And that brings us right to this core idea of the signs of the appearance. In the Shia Islamic tradition, this isn't just one or two prophecies. It's a whole collection of them, all pointing to the arrival of a promised savior, a figure known as the Mahdi.
So try not to think of these signs as just a random list of spooky predictions. They're meant to be more like guideposts on a long road trip. They're there to give believers a sense of where we are in history, helping them get ready for what's described as this massive, world-changing event.
But here's the thing. We're talking about hundreds, maybe even thousands of these prophecies. So how in the world do you even start to make sense of them all? Well, thankfully, the source material we're looking at breaks them down into a few really logical categories.
So the first way they slice it is by time. Some signs are considered long gone, things that have already happened, like the collapse of certain empires. Then you have signs that are seen as unfolding right now in our world, stuff like widespread corruption or major changes in how people live their lives. And then, of course, you've got the future signs, the really big events that believers are still watching for.
The next way to sort them is by how specific they are. You have general signs, which are these big, broad trends. Think a global rise in greed or a decline in family values. But then you have specific signs, and these are much more concrete. They'll actually name certain people, like a figure called the Sufyani, or they'll point to things happening in very specific places. Now, among all of these prophecies, there are 5 that really stand out. These are considered the inevitable signs. They're the big ones, the non-negotiable major league events that are seen as the final, most important signposts right before the Mahdi's arrival. Okay, this all raises a really big question, doesn't it? Why? Why were these prophecies even given in the first place? If you can't really change what's going to happen, what's the point of knowing about them? What are they for? Well, according to the source, the signs have a few crucial jobs. First, they're meant to actually strengthen people's faith as they see some of these ancient predictions come true. They're also like a defense system, helping believers spot and reject false saviors who pop up but don't match the descriptions. And maybe most importantly, their real job is to get people into a state of spiritual readiness. To really see how this works, check out this incredible example from the source. For centuries, there was this prophecy that said when the final savior arrives, people all over the world would be able to see him and hear him just by looking into the palm of their hand. I mean, for hundreds and hundreds of years, that just sounded like pure magic, right? An impossible miracle. How could you possibly see someone thousands of miles away in the palm of your hand? It was a real test of faith. But what about today?
Yep, smartphones. All of a sudden, a prophecy that was a complete mystery for generations becomes totally plausible with things like live streaming. Now, the source is careful to say this doesn't mean the prophecy was definitely about smartphones. The point is that something that once seemed absolutely impossible is now completely normal, and that realization can be a huge boost to a person's faith.
But this is where our whole explainer takes a really critical turn. Because if looking for these signs can be so great for your faith, what's the catch? What's the hidden danger that comes from focusing too much on all this prophecy stuff? And here we get to the absolute heart of the matter. The speaker gives this really passionate warning. There's a huge spiritual danger in becoming obsessed with the signs themselves and completely forgetting what they're supposed to be pointing to. The source uses this powerful historical example to illustrate the point. The ancient Jewish tribes in Medina, they knew the prophecies about a coming prophet inside and out. They knew the place, the timing, all the characteristics. But when the prophet Muhammad arrived, he fit the signs, but he came from a different family line than they expected. And because of that one detail, they rejected him. Knowing all the signs perfectly did them absolutely no good.
So you see the danger? You can become a world-class expert on the when, the where, and the how of all these prophecies. But if you lose sight of the why, the core spiritual principles of justice and compassion and morality, then all that knowledge can actually lead you in the completely wrong direction.
To make this point absolutely crystal clear, the speaker uses this fantastic analogy, the difference between a map and a compass. Think about it like this. The signs and prophecies, they're your map. They give you all the details, landmarks, street names, what the terrain looks like up ahead. But maps can be really complicated. You can misread them, you can even hold them upside down. The core principles of your faith, though, that's your compass. It's simple, it's reliable, and it always, always points true north.
And this is really the whole lesson in a nutshell. Your map might tell you that you're on the right street, but only your compass can tell you if you're walking north toward your destination or south away from it. If a sign seems to tell you to do something that goes against a core principle, like justice, then your compass is screaming at you that you're misreading the map.
The source actually has a name for this compass, the Mat-id-Din, which basically means the core of religion. This is the foundation. It's the non-negotiable, absolute bedrock of faith that has to guide everything else. The signs are helpful, sure, but the core is essential.
So, what's the big takeaway here? It's a call to action. The source argues that waiting for a savior isn't about passively sitting around watching the news. It's about active preparation. It means focusing on your own character, your own spiritual state. It's a warning not to fall into the trap of thinking you should help cause chaos just to speed things up. No, the argument is the exact opposite. Your job is to be a force for good, right here, right now.
At the end of the day, the whole point of all this isn't to create a bunch of expert prophecy watchers. The real goal is to inspire people to become the kind of person who would actually be ready for and worthy of a new era of global justice and peace. It totally shifts the focus from what's happening out there to what's happening in here.
And that leaves us with one last question to chew on. In any journey, spiritual or otherwise, it's so easy to get obsessed with the little details on the map. But the real question is, have you checked your compass lately? Are you actually pointed toward the right destination, or are you just busy looking at street signs on the wrong road?